Members of the company, this is your Places call. Places, please. Places for the top of the podcast. Places, please.
Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the glitz and not-so-glam of Broadway, education, and everyday life with Uncommon Sense. Join hosts Christopher Smith and Sharna Lopez as they bring you the best stories and shenanigans that seemingly prove how elusive common sense can really be. So take a little time for yourself to hang out with the dynamic duo Charnopher, and no leaving early, because you might just miss that 11 o'clock number.
Stand by music. Music, go.
Uncommon sense, the 11 o'clock number. And we are Charnopher.
Every time, Sharna, every time.
But I kind of think it's like what our intro is now. Sharna not
It's our
paying
new
attention.
intro.
And good thing we don't have to have like a super clean welcome, because I would fail.
Right.
I would
That's what
actually
editing's
fail.
for, but now this is what we're doing.
Hi, Sharna fans. I was so excited. I was writing our welcome back episode description, like, yay, we're back. And so I was really looking forward to recording this next one. And then when we got on, if you can see Christopher, if you're watching, if you're not, I will try my best to describe it. But he's like drinking a magical mug of coffee. What's on your mug?
It says educational rock star.
And it's got like little stars, and he just looks so cozy and happy. Hey, and look, your mug is kind of theming with my headband. We didn't even like
it totally is.
practice that. But
Ta-da.
I had like a travel mug, and I felt really lame. So I'm like, Christopher, before we start, I'm gonna go downstairs and I put my coffee in a mug. And I got really excited, and I picked my favorite mug given to me by
She did get
the
excited.
one and only Katy Perry Page. And I got really excited. And then I got up here and I was like, well, bummer, because this is my favorite mug. And if you're not watching, I'll explain to you. It says, love ya, mean it. But it's a left-handed mug, apparently, because it only says it on the one side. If you hold the mug with your left hand, and y'all, I have a broken left thumb and I can't squeeze anything. So now it's just a plain, sad, white mug on my right hand. Like, if you're not watching, it's not as funny, but if you're watching, it's so ridiculous. Like, I literally went downstairs to get a mug so I could be part of the mug club, and now it's just this boring white mug. Whatever. I'm over it. My coffee's really good.
Here's the thing. See, there you go. That's what's important. And you succeeded in your journey to get the mug.
So, I have hundreds of mugs. Well, maybe not hundreds. I have dozens of mugs that I could choose from. And I choose the one left-handed mug when I can't grip something with my left hand. That is how my day's going to go today. I'm already feeling it. God bless us.
Great. Here we go.
All right.
Well,
Christopher, what are we talking about today?
We are going to talk about, because as we were discussing before the show started, that you were doing costumes last night, and you came into my rehearsal and we were doing costumes last night, and you're like, what is this costume world that we live in? So I don't know anything about costuming a show personally. I've never done it. Don't really know what goes into it, but I did find this cool list, because we love a list. But
we love a list. That's a new thing that came about. Like, we didn't even start our podcast like, we should really talk about lists. We didn't say that. We just, like, out of nowhere, I think one day when we got a list up, we were like, wait, this is fun. You know why? Because both you and I can talk about anything, anytime for 100 hours. So you give us a list, we got some stuff to say.
We'll be like, absolutely.
And before you start your list, Christopher, this is actually really great that you jumped right into the list, because I could just start talking about costumes with no list. I have not actually like fully costumed a show, but I've done enough costuming and help and directed enough and been in enough shows that I could write, actually, I think a chapter in my book is going to be called The Joys and Perils of Costuming. Or not even that. It'll just be like, Shut Up and Wear It. That's going to be the name of that chapter. Shut up and wear it. And smile.
I think we just and like it. I think we should write a series of like mini books, just like a collection of books that's just small stories each one.
I like that.
And that can be the title of that book.
I used to say it as kind of a joke when I first started teaching. I'll be like, oh, this is going to go in my book. And then after a while, I was like, hold up. I already have like 7 novels, like with all this information. So I actually started keeping track. And I have a list, and I need a really good like title for the book itself. I could fill those pages right quick. But anyway, back to costume.
Well, how about you write the pages? I'll come up with a killer title.
Love that. And my plain white mug makes an appearance.
Yeah, that'll be one of the chapters.
I'm not going to get over it. Okay, so, go to your list. Here we are.
It is dun 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 dun, the 10 Commandments of Costuming a Show.
Ooh, what's the
Commandment one.
Song in Hamilton about the commandments? It's the 10 dual commandments. How many? What? Come on, the fact that we don't know that? It's the dual commandments.
I don't know about
1.
I don't know.
Okay, carry on. That's embarrassing. I don't know either.
This is going well.
Okay, 10 Commandments of Costuming. What's number 1?
Yes. Commandment 1, thou shalt read the script.
Well, that's embarrassing if you don't read the script.
Right.
Actually, you know what?
Yeah, but
it's funny. See, this is why I love me a list, because I would have never even thought to bring this up. But I guarantee you there are costumers out there, and probably more so with youth theater or younger shows or community shows, where they're just like, oh, I kind of know this story. I kind of know the Addams Family, or I kind of know this. And then they're like, wait, what? This character is different? Because oftentimes shows, musicals, stage productions are very different than whatever book or movie you've seen.
Yeah. But even then, like, even if you've seen the show, I find this to be true even when I'm music directing. I'm like, I've seen a show 5 times and I'm like, oh, this is in it? Oh, what's happening here? What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with costume changes, right? That one always comes to bite me in the butt when the costumer's like, wait, I didn't know they needed a costume change. I'm like, well, yeah, it's a new day.
Well,
it's a new dawn.
Don't skip ahead. Don't skip ahead. It's
skip
a new
ahead,
day.
Skip ahead. What show is that?
It's a new dawn. That is Shrek.
Yes. Christopher. A+.
What's the other one we were doing? It's a new dawn.
That's not from a show, is it? That's just feeling good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
But I don't think that's in a show.
But I feel like Feelin Good is in a show somewhere.
Is it really? Ooh. We might have to look that up after we go through our 10 Commandments of Costuming. All right, number 2.
Number 2. Thou shalt not costume alone.
Interesting.
Yeah. Basically, I think they don't mean necessarily that you need the costumers. It's that you don't do it independent of all the other members of the team. Like without the director and the lighting designer, like you need to be part of a production team.
Correct.
Because all the other things are going to affect what you're doing.
Hair, makeup. A big one for me as a director is I actually find that. Are you okay?
Yeah, it's all good. I just smashed my foot on the microphone. It's all good.
You're just like, ow. I find I try really hard in the beginning to communicate and connect with a customer, because oftentimes it's something like, oh, this character needs a pocket because they have to have this, or this can't be 19 straps because they have a quick change, or this can't be like that communication, because there have been times where customers will come in with something and the costume looks fabulous. And then I'll be like, but she has to be able to do this, or, and I think that's a big part of, or she's got this giant wig that she can't get over, or, like you can't be in your own silo. That's a good point, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think on the heels of that, having a team to help you is really important. Like last night,
Yeah.
for instance, I'm just costuming one number in our like showcase show right now, but it would have really helped if I had had another person there with me last night to label, to check kids, to see what needs to be taken in, to write things down. Like when you're just one person, it is a lot to try and manage. So bring a friend.
But I think a lot of times costumers have at least an assistant, if not a couple assistants, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Number 3, thou shalt anticipate costume changes, which is exactly what you were just talking about.
Yep.
So it's like you have to make sure you know when there's a quick change, if there's a quick change, what that entails, how fast it is, what they need to be able to get out of, when into, both.
And I think it also means, so I have had on a handful of occasions that I can recall where a costumer has like brought something in and the kid comes in the room and I'm like, oh, that's not really what I like. And sometimes the costumers like totally have something back up, right? Like they're ready. And sometimes the customers like, they want to punch you in the face because they're like, but this is what I really envisioned. And so it's definitely still a collaboration, but the good costumers that I've worked with are so great at, oh, okay, what is it that you don't like about this? Or help me understand what, so they're not wasting their time trying to put on 19 things, right? And so it's really helpful in having that attitude going into it. Like, okay, the director may not see this the way I do. And, or I love when costumers, like when we have the show costumed and it's tech week and they're on stage and the costumers or even hair or makeup will come down and sit next to me and we'll look at it together and we see the same exact thing. They're like, oop, he can't wear that because this doesn't go with that. You know, ooh, let's make that change. Like you see it and it's different when you see it on the body in front of you in costume fittings and when you see it on the stage with the set, with the other people, with the movement.
Exactly.
So I think just always being ready and flexible to do changes.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I love how in this one, for a quick change inspiration, check out Elsa's onstage dress reveal during Let It Go in Frozen.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's a quick change, but also, like, what? That's not going to help anybody because
that's not
that
that's
is
a
rigged
quick
like
change,
crazy.
but like that's a designed like magnetic costume. That's not your normal like. Here's a quick change.
That's why I'm like,
that's a pretty cool change. Have you seen the ones like when they malfunction? That actually makes me more happy than when it works. It's freaking hilarious. Oh my gosh! Please, please do yourself a favor.
To watch a compilation.
Oh, there's probably 17. It's like when my kids, when their voices crack in a show, and I'm like, go check out the YouTube compilation of Broadway stars cracking. You have to check out the costume malfunctions of, usually it's the Cinderella dress and the Elsa dress are the two that like hilarity.
Nice.
Hilarity. And the franticness that ensues on stage. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's very funny.
It's so evil. Laughing at those poor people's hardship. Okay. So number 4. Thou shalt do research. Hit the internet, people.
Ooh,
hit the internet.
This is a really good one.
Yes.
So a big thing for me that I really admire, and I've learned a lot from costume designers and costumers over the years, everything from youth theater, community, professional, know your eras. I cannot stand when people are like, I'll just throw this on a kid. I'm like, P.S. This show takes place in the 80s, and that is from 1955. Like, and it's hard. I mean, that one's really ridiculous. Then you'd be fired if you're trying to put somebody in a 50s costume in the 80s. But the ones that are tricky to me are the 50s, 60s. Like, they really try to cross over. And then the 20s, 30s, 40s. I feel like the 20s to the 40s, so many costumers are lazy. And they're just like, here's a thing. And I'm like, that's not from the 40s. Like, and if you really want to do it right, that's the kind of reason. And I don't even know it all. There'll be some people that are like, oh, this type of hat and this type of coat, men's coats and the pants and all the stuff. You got to know that. You can't just throw a suit on a kid if the show takes place in 1985 or if it takes place in 1945 or 1902. Actually, last night was
Some
funny.
of those-
So I was costuming a Newsies number. And so we're doing Showcase right now. And Christopher is musically directing Sideshow, one of my favorite shows. And I cannot wait to see it. Sideshows is in the 40s, 30s?
20s, 30s.
Okay. So 20s to start,
I
and then
don't
it goes into the
remember which.
30s. Yeah.
I think so.
And Newsies is turn of the century, right? Early 1900s. So the kids last night, it's so funny to watch them. They're like, these pants don't fit. I'm like, they do fit. They do. They don't fit you for 2024 because we don't wear knickers in 2024. Okay. We wear knickers when we're a newsie. Like, oh, this doesn't look, and I'm like, guys, this shirt's too small. I'm like, no, this is like a pajama shirt. I'm like, yeah, if you were a newsie, you would be wearing long underwear and suspenders. Like,
Yeah.
you've got to know the era. And I think it's important for the costumer to also communicate that with the students. A big one with students is like tucking shirts in, or how you wear the cuffs. Like, you don't roll them up, you leave them down. Or do you wear your tie? You always have a hat, or you have gloves if you're a girl and you're going to go outside, right? It's a big thing for me. Sorry.
Well, it's important because
I tangented.
No, it's because if anybody, it's like anything. It can pull your eye and then pull you right out of the moment.
Totally.
If it
and it kind of crosses
right.
over to props, right? I can't stand when people do like a show from the 50s and the telephone is, from 1920. You're like, that's not correct.
Right.
And or vice versa.
No.
It's the same thing, just doing research.
Yeah. I'm like, unless you are setting Grease in 2025, do not bring an iPhone onto the stage.
Oh my gosh, which we won't get into that. I witnessed a show that attempted to do that and I was heartbroken. That's for another time.
We will talk about it after the show. All right.
Number 5.
This one's kind of interesting. Thou shalt sketch it out. Regardless of your drawing skills, make a visual representation of what the costume looks like in your mind's eye.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's a jumping off point.
They do suggest using like magazine clippings, online photos, even dolls or action figures. Just something like, if you can't draw, just figure out how to
like a
represent
vision
what
board.
you're trying to say.
Like a
yeah.
I love
which
that.
I think is much more common now.
I agree, and I think I had a couple years ago we were doing Pippin at school, and I had one of the students. She wanted to design the leading player costumes. And I was like, yeah. And they did a whole digital drawing, like mock-up of everything. I was so impressed. And I remember seeing it and being like, yes, I love this concept. How about we switch this? We change this. And it's much easier when you have a drawing to point to, right? Or even visual pictures, like you said, something you've pulled from the internet, a magazine, whatever it may be. I think this is the same for sets. I am, as all of my students will tell you, the worst visual artist known to man. I think my poor son may have inherited that amazing. I can't, when I'm teaching my broadcast journalism class and I'm trying to draw on the board, like how to shoot, the kids are like, what are you? Is that a stick figure? I'm like, y'all, we're at an art school. Please don't judge Mrs. Lopez. Okay. I am stick figure extraordinaire. And even then it's not good. So when I try and draw like what I want the set to look like, I always apologize in advance. I'm like, set designer, please just go with me on this journey. Okay. But it's true because some people can visualize so much better when they see even a rudimentary picture of something. Oh my gosh. The fact that you've never been there for one of those moments is hilarious.
No.
I'm very bad. I'm very bad. I'm going to squirrel for a minute. Have you ever played the game Telestrations?
I have not, but I know it.
Get on board. It is one of my favorite. It's like our family favorite. We play it. If we have game night, we always play it. If we're at the Youngs, because that's where we do a lot of games. When we go on vacation, we take it with us. It is one of the funniest. It's essentially telephone, but with drawings. And if you get somebody who's like a really great, artist, or then you get somebody like Sharna, every animal looks like a zombie dinosaur. It's like, is it a panda? Is it a horse? Is it a T-Rex? Is it a platypus? I don't know. That's Sharna's drawing of whatever creature she just tried.
Is it my favorite of that? might be zombie dinosaur. Did you say zombie dinosaur?
Yeah.
I was laughing. I couldn't even remember.
Yes.
Or platypus.
Yes.
Platypus might be the winner for me.
Like I'm not good at animals, right? Anyway, that's a tangent.
Ugh,
But
that's okay.
oh goodness. All right.
All that to
what's
say,
next?
sketch it out.
Yeah, which I think is a
All
great
right.
idea.
Number 6, thou shalt consider the details. Costuming a show is so much more than fabric, sewing, and hemming, though it definitely involves all those things. You also need to consider accessories like hats, jewelry, shoes, etc.
Yes.
And you have to work with your props team to determine when and how items like umbrellas, per se, will be used, as well as which department will have custody of them.
This is
Stay
huge.
in your own lane.
And I think stay in your own lane. I think again, it goes kind of back to doing your research and knowing the era, because again, there's certain eras of musical theater that anytime a man went outside, he would have a hat. Well, anytime a man would have a hat on, right? He would always have a hat. They never left their home without a hat. And then if they enter a room, they take their hat off, right? Teaching kids how to do that, or even performers in general. And then same thing with women. Like I love the shows where every girl has to have like a little hat and gloves and a purse. Like anytime they would go outside, like if you were in the 50s or 60s, if you were like, I always think of like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, you know,
Yes, I
the
love that
hat
show.
matches the purse, matches the gloves, matches the shoes. Like that's what they did. I think in youth theater, it's hard sometimes because you're like, okay, we just want this kid to enter stage right at the correct moment. If we throw gloves and a hat and a purse at them, they're never coming on stage. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of, you're like, Sally, we just need you to make the entrance. Don't worry about your gloves.
Right.
And if you do, then you get the kids that put the gloves on backward and they're like, I don't
Yes.
know how to, and then they act weird on stage because they're wearing gloves and you're like,
Yeah.
they're just gloves. It's totally fine. So I think in
It's
youth theater, I'm
totally
forgiving of that. But I think once you hit high school, I actually think it's a disservice if you don't pay attention to those details, because I think
Yeah.
it waters down the era and the feeling and that environment on stage. I love it, like parasols and all that kind of stuff. It's very handkerchiefs.
I love a handkerchief.
A handkerchief. All right, what's next? 7.
Thou shalt have costume fittings. You should always have actors try on their costumes ahead of Tech Week. But also, who doesn't do that? Like, who doesn't have a costume fitting? Like, is
Well,
there people that would really do that?
I think maybe people that would do it, but would do it kind of late. So one thing I have learned is that people are like, oh, we'll do the costume fitting here. And it doesn't leave enough time to like anticipate, ooh, this really doesn't work. Or there's a lot of alterations. I think costume fitting sooner rather than later, right? So for instance,
Yeah.
you guys were doing costume fittings last night, right?
We were just double checking costumes. We were not
Okay,
really
so they had
doing
already tried them on.
fittings per se.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think as long as the customer has enough time, I would be terrified if people didn't do costume fittings. That's bizarre.
Yeah. I think that when you get signed on to a project, if there's enough turnaround time, I would want to do it like first week, second week of rehearsal.
Yep.
Because why would you not want to have more time?
Yep. And I think a few customers I've worked with, they do that. They're in there right from the beginning. And I really like that because they kind of get the process going early. I also think along the line of costume fittings, I think it's important for things to fit actors. Sometimes I've seen costumers that are like, oh, it's close enough. And I know as a performer, I'm like, close enough. I'm going to be on stage. I need this to feel comfortable and I need to be confident in it. So I usually try and advocate for my performers. If a costumer's like, oh, it's fine. I'm like, they want it a little tighter or it needs to be taken out. They can't lift their arms correctly or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's really important, I think, that they can move in the costume and feel comfortable in it.
Yeah, I once did a show. I don't remember what show, but I remember they put on a costume and they could not even like move their arms at all. They look like a T-Rex. It was like meh, meh, meh. Could
And
not.
I always
lift
love
their
the
arms at
actors
all.
who are like really good and they're like, oh, it's fine. And then they're like walking around like they're
Yeah.
looking really special. You're like, that's not fine. I understand that you're like trying to be
No.
helpful, but like you can't even, raise your arms and sit down, you rock in the boat. You're
And it's like, thank you for playing and thank you for being so great.
Try again.
But it's like in Friends when Monica says, I'm fine. I'm not sick. I'm fine. And then they're like, there is no D in fine. You are not fine.
I'm fine. I just watched an episode of Friends last night. Oh man.
Excellent. I know you were on that journey. How far on that journey are you?
Well, we kind of like the holidays sort of took us on a hiatus because, there's so many things that happened. Man, I felt like the holidays went so fast this year too. But we're back. So we're only in season 2.
We're back.
Don't judge me. But we're getting there.
It's okay.
We got a lot. And we also started How I Met Your Mother. So that one's sort of like which is very funny too. Neil Patrick Harris is so funny. If you're listening,
he is.
Neil Patrick Harris, I think you're hilarious.
Hilarious.
So, I laugh out loud watching that show. He's so funny.
Well, Barney is just ridiculous.
Yes. I mean, the writing is very, very good.
Yeah.
All right. What number were we on?
All
8?
right. Back on track. 8. Thou shalt consider practice pieces.
Ooh.
Some shows feature pieces of costumes and scenes almost like characters. For example, the titular coat of many colors in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is usually the center of choreography in things like Joseph's coat.
It was red and yellow and green and brown, scarlet. Do you know all of those colors in that song?
No.
I've done that show far too many times. I honestly,
I've never actually done it.
What? I love that show. I'm going to be honest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've done that show 6 times. 6.
Wow.
It's probably the show I've done the most.
It
is the show I've done the most.
3, 4, 5, 6.
Practice pieces, 300%. I mean, the coat, Joseph's coat is a really good example. Hold on a second. Just had to get one really good cough out. Pardon me, Charna fans. Rehearsal skirts are a huge one for me. So if girls are going to be wearing any type of skirt, like when we just did Into the Woods, I had my Cinderellas and Baker's Wife and the stepsisters all wear rehearsal skirts. It's a huge difference. If there's, a scarf, a coat, something that is a big part of the show, the earlier you can get it in there, the better. I totally agree with that because it's like any other prop that if you throw it in last minute, people are like, what's this dress I'm wearing and why can't I walk regular? Hoop skirts are a big one.
Yeah.
If anyone's going to wear a hoop skirt, I remember, I think it was 42nd Street was the first time I had to wear a hoop skirt. And I was so grateful that we rehearsed in them because it's a whole different animal,
Yeah. We're going to take down half the cast if you just move to the left.
Or yourself as you fall into the orchestra pit.
Right. All right. Number 9. Thou shalt watch the final product on stage. Stay tuned in during the entire rehearsal process. At least once per week, watch a full run through of the show and take notes. Who does a full run through once per week? What shows are you working on?
Well, I think they're talking about probably like regional theater or tours, right? Like you can think like there's got to be somebody that's checking in like throughout. I even like for our level though, youth theater, community theater, I love when my costumers stay. I get really sad when they're like, okay, we costumed the show. Everyone has a costume. I'm out. Because things happen or things change and or I feel like they don't get to enjoy the amazingness of it. You know what a big thing that I've realized recently that changes costumers' ideas sometimes is the lighting. So even just this last show, we had the costumes all set. And then when we got on stage with full production, we changed some things because it was like, oh, this doesn't look right or against the scenic colors or whatever it may be.
Right.
So I think that's a really great point in just keeping engaged throughout the whole process. Totally.
Absolutely.
I like that one. What's the last one?
All right, number 10, which is what you just sort of talked about. Thou shalt enjoy the show.
Yes.
Like, sit back, relax, enjoy all of the hard work that you have put in. And
yes.
what's the one they give? Yeah. And they gave a bonus tip too.
What's bonus?
Bonus tip is if you can't wash your costumes between shows, like let's say an afternoon, evening, at least air them out. And I love how it's like the audience won't be able to smell the actors, but anyone on or behind stage will.
Yes. Hey, look, I can speak from being a very sweaty human being. We all know this. This is not a secret.
Yeah.
I have done so many shows where even when I get my costume, I'm like, has this ever been washed? Why does it smell like cat pee? What is happening? I'm like the queen of Febreze. Like, okay, I say cat pee because literally I'm going to tell you a story. We did chess years ago. Christopher's cracking up. We did chess years ago. And I think I was maybe a junior or senior in high school. And it was like, you know, a professional show. And we were so excited. And so you just like do your costume things. So in the beginning of chess, we all like the ensemble were chess pieces. Do you know the show Chess?
Not well.
Okay. It's a pretty interesting, it's a great show. But in our production,
it's got beautiful music.
Yeah, it really does. Some really great songs. But we had a raked stage that lit up like a chessboard. It was awesome. And so the whole opening number was the ensemble, like choreography, like doing choreography that looked like a game of chess. It was really cool. But these costumes were full covered unitards. Like our heads were fully covered unitards. And then you like put on your piece of whatever like chess piece you were.
Yeah.
I put that unitard on and I was like, sweet baby Jesus in heaven, I'm going to throw up. It smelled like cat pee. We called it the cat pee costumes. I swear to you. And to this day, I always think about that when like my students, when I'm like, they're like, this kind of smells. I'm like, give me that. Febreze works wonders, but also a mixture of vodka and water is what a lot of the professional costumers will use, like a spray bottle to spray it.
Great. We just use straight vodka, honestly.
Yeah. Because some of them,
that's what's in the Febreze that pulls it out.
Yes. And you can launder, but some of those costumes, some of these beautiful costumes that have been handmade for certain tours and then they're reused, it's like, there's only so many times they can, you know, and I'm a sweaty gal. I used to, after like a matinee, I would lay all my costume stuff out because if you just like hang it back up in the room and then you close it, you gotta air it out. I will say, if you professional theater companies, I love that, they do your laundry in between shows. My mom used to do a lot of that for our theater that we grew up at, but not for our students. I always tell our students to have like double pair of everything. So if you have a certain undershirt you're wearing or a certain leotard or undergarments or tights or whatever, buy two, because then you can go home and put that one in the wash and wear the next one the next day. And then you can rotate them out. Socks, right? And I always have all sorts of spray things backstage for our teenage friends, so we don't be too smelly. Hey, this list was actually kind of awesome. I loved it.
Yeah.
But it talked more from like a costumer's perspective.
Yeah.
I want to talk two things from a performer's perspective that I tell all of my casts and students. Firstly, you are not the costumer. And and that kind of just like encompasses a lot of things, right? And I'll go into detail with them, but
I need
to
take a moment with that.
Yeah.
I need to take a moment with that and say, again, you being the actor on stage, tiny human, are not the costumer.
Correct.
You are not the director.
Yep.
You are not on the creative team in any fashion.
Yep.
Please and thank you. Carry on.
And I try to tell the kids, I'm like, that doesn't mean you're like silenced if something doesn't fit.
Absolutely not.
If you have a question, I have a really great story about an actor coming up and asking me, and I'll tell it in a second. But I always tell the kids, the costumer is not going to come up and tell you what to do like with your acting. The customer is not going to come up and be like,
No.
hey, that choreography right there, that doesn't look very good. Like everyone needs to be in their own lane and we need to understand how we work together. So if you don't like your costume, if you think it's ugly, I don't care. And I always tell them, it is a picture. So when you stand backstage in a mirror and you're 1 foot away from the costume on your body and it looks terrible, it probably does look terrible. When you get on stage and a director and a costumer and a creative team is looking at the whole picture with lights from however many feet away, it looks different. And I encourage the kids to come out into the house and watch their castmates so they can see, oh yeah, that dress looked really nasty and ratty backstage, but on stage, now I can see that it looks, it looks fine. And I think that's something for them to learn. The only time I tell kids, like, I'm like, if you don't like it, if you don't like the color, if you don't like the style, zip it. If it doesn't fit, if it feels uncomfortable or keeps you from doing something you need to do on stage, let me know, right? I don't want somebody to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I want you to feel comfortable. I have worn many a costume that I have found to be very ugly. And you know what? You just do it. You just do it. And then you look over at the other person, you're like, why did they get the cute dress? And I've got the mustard yellow, something weird, but whatever. Like you just gotta go with it, So that's number one.
That is the dress in Something Rotten that was named after Something Rotten.
Oh yeah. That's right. There's always one, And then secondly, take care of your costumes. This is something when I was younger, maybe I wasn't paying attention. And in professional theater, I think people are a little more aware. But even last night when I was assigning these kids newsy costumes and I would get these kids coming up to me, grown kids in my mind that can drive vehicles, that don't know how to hang up a shirt. And I'm like, hey, you,
what?
Hooligan number 5, come on over here. This does not work for me. So I don't know who hangs your shirts up at home, but I'm going to teach you, because I'm a teacher of all things, apparently, how you hang up a shirt. Because if you don't hang it up right, it's either going to fall off and get lost, and then you're going to be sad and you're not going to have a shirt. It's going to be wrinkled. Like, you have to take care of your costumes. And it's something I really, really try to make sure my students do. Sometimes I fail because I'm busy running around doing other things, but I think it's such an important lesson for them to learn. Like, someone took a lot of time finding these costumes and building these costumes. So you got to take care of them.
Well, we know when we go backstage during a run or whatever, and I get just about as irritated as you do. Not quite, because the mercury rises on you. But but when they're like just laying about on a table, or worse yet, just on the floor in a heap, I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah.
Incorrect. You have another show and you do not want your costume all messed up.
And I think
don't do that.
If there's a quick change, this is another thing students have to learn, or kids mostly, but adults too. So we used to, when I was doing theater professionally, college-ish and a little older, we used to get fined. So if you left your costume side stage and you didn't go get, if you had a quick change and you left it over there, same with a prop, you'd be fined. They would take money out of our paycheck. So I tell the students that, and they're like, no way. I'm like, yes, because your mommy and daddy or grandma or nanny are not there following you around, picking up all your stuff. And usually when a student's like, I can't find my gloves, I always am like, we did it. We did it, everybody. We made a really great example of what happens when you don't take care of your things. And the kids are always like, I'm like, you guys, I have 10 pairs of extra gloves, but that's not my point. My point is that you didn't put them back in your little bag that said gloves for Joey. Just do it. Or when they hang them up, I love when kids hang them up and it's just like inside out and upside down and the dress is like shoved on the hanger. I'm like, y'all, you're going to go out there looking like you rolled out of a trash bag. Hang up your dress. And it takes an extra 30 seconds, but kids are just like, meh, and they just throw it in there and you're like, oh. And then the next show, you're like, oh, that queen did not hang up her dress correctly. She is trash bag girl.
Maybe that should be the name of our episode. Don't look like you rolled out of a trash bag.
But I don't think think they think about, especially kids. They don't think about it. They don't even care, you know?
Couldn't even make it through that statement. Oh,
Oh, man. Too funny.
gosh. Anyway, that was a good list. The
Yeah.
10 Commandments of costuming.
And if you happen to be a costumer or you costume shows, we'd love to hear your input. If there's anything else you want to add, you can DM us on our Instagram.
Absolutely.
I would love to hear from, because again, I've had a lot of experience with costumes, but I've never fully like been the costumer
Costumed
of a show. So
a
yeah.
show. Right.
We should do a B episode of costume malfunctions, because that
I like
I have a
it.
lot of stories, and you probably have been around for some of those.
Yeah.
I mean, we just had
Great, I
one
love
this
that.
summer in Something Rotten on stage. Remember when Sam lost her skirt?
Mhm.
They're
Yep.
so very funny.
It was great.
That'll be a bonus. We'll do a
All
bonus
right.
episode.
Okay. Sounds grand. Here we go, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Uncommon Sense, the 11 o'clock number. Check out uncommonpod.com. Follow us on Instagram at Charnopher Official. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. Get notified when we have new ones. Every Monday at 11 is
Woo
always
woo.
the goal. And then I think I got everything today. That's great. Well,
You're
episode 2 of the year. Fantastic. All right. And on that note, Charnopher out.
With my left-handed mug. It's so cute, and it didn't
Cheers.
even really get to make an appearance.
This concludes another episode of Uncommon Sense. If you're ready for more of this fresh, hilarious, and unique perspective on the world of entertainment, education, and life, be sure to subscribe right now to catch every episode. If you gasped, laughed out loud, or even snorted, share the show with your friends and aspiring entertainers because, let's be real, sharing is caring. For more Charnopher, tune in to their witty insights by checking out the website uncommonpod.com or connecting on social media. Tune in next week and get the real insider scoop on another episode of Uncommon Sense.